This video is in session. Today I want to talk about what happened in the US Senate just a couple of days ago. They voted to acquit Trump by a margin of 44 to 56. So today I'm going to examine why 6 Republican senators chose to go with the Democrats and why other Republicans did not choose. So starting off with Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins of Maine. Both of them are pretty moderate Republicans. They're very well known as moderates, and a lot of the times they vote by their conscience their rather than their politics, rather than their party, especially with Susan Collins since she's in a Democratic state. So that's Alaska and Maine. Now let's go to Utah. Utah, this is Mitt Romney. He also votes more by his conscience on these kinds of more social issues. Um, like convicting Donald Trump. He was the only Republican senator in Trump's first conviction trial to convict him for one of the articles of impeachment. The other one he didn't vote to convict, but he also votes more of his conscience with these kinds of issues. He's also vehemently against Trump in terms of how he acts. Now let's go to these 3 senators. These 3 senators are a little more surprising. Pat Toomey is the least surprising of them. Pat Toomey is retiring in 2022. Some would say he's a moderate. It's a little bit on the fence on whether he's actually a moderate or not. But what I would say though is that Pat Toomey is retiring. So politically speaking, he doesn't have to. He isn't committing any political suicide from this. If he was up for re-election, then no doubt he was not going to vote to convict Trump. But since he's not running for re-election in 2022, then it's pretty reasonable for him to vote against, or I guess vote against the majority of Republicans. And a theme here is that many of the Republicans who are voting for Donald Trump either don't really like Donald Trump or are retiring. And another one of those retirees is Richard Burr. Now, Richard Burr, his conviction vote was one of the most surprising votes, in addition to Bill Cassidy's. But it makes sense. Richard Burr is also retiring in 2022, so he can vote more of his conscience and not commit political suicide. That said, it's surprising because there are other senators who are retiring in 2022 who are not voting to convict Donald Trump, like Rob Portman of Ohio. So Richard Burr's vote was a bit surprising, but in retrospect, it's actually not that surprising. Finally, Bill Cassidy. This one, in my opinion, is the most surprising vote. And the reason why I say it's most surprising is because he's a sit-in senator. He doesn't have plans to retire as of now, and he's in a very Republican state. So this, in some ways, is him voting in his conscience, but in part, he isn't up for re-election until 2024. So as a result, he has some leeway to, I guess, correct himself politically from this vote. By the time 2024 comes, a lot of people will have forgotten that Bill Cassidy was one of the people who convicted Donald Trump. In addition to well, actually, no one else, because no one else here is planning to run in their next term besides Lisa Murkowski, who's moderate, and Susan Collins and and Mitt Romney, who are all pretty well known to not like Donald Trump. So yeah, Bill Cassidy's vote, in my opinion, is the most surprising one. Now let's examine why some people did not vote to convict Donald Trump. First is Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell said, or indicated a few months ago, actually not a few months ago, at this point, like a month ago, that Donald Trump had reasons to be convicted. So we all thought he was going to convict Donald Trump and that more senators as a result would join him. But then Mitch McConnell walked back as time progressed. And ultimately, he did not vote to convict Donald Trump. Obviously, it was pretty inept of him to convict Donald Trump, and then right after, literally right after, give a speech saying how Donald Trump was responsible for the Capitol riots. But I mean, he's from Kentucky. He's not going to get any political repercussions. That said, he did get a lot of pushback from Democrats, but he doesn't really care about Democrats. He's not in a swing state at all. So that's why that's why Mitch McConnell didn't vote. And also, he subsided to the more conservative part of the Republican Party. You had people like Matt Gaetz calling for the removal of Liz Cheney. If Mitch McConnell was going to vote for convicting Donald Trump, then he would probably fear for a primary in his 2026 election. So that's why he didn't vote to convict. And if you look at the 2022 senators that aren't going to retire, pretty much all of them voted to acquit Donald Trump. Why? Because politically it would not be good for them to convict Donald Trump. It would not be politically good in the primary for Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, who's up in 2022, to convict Donald Trump, because then he would face a primary challenge. The same thing goes for Chuck Grassley, or let's see, who else? Or even Marco Rubio. And second, all of these senators are not. I mean, all of these senators at this point have subsided to the wants of Trump loyalists, to Trumpism, and those who supported Trump supporters, because they are a pretty big force in the Republican Party. But at the same time, if the Republican Party was only comprised of Trump supporters, then there would not be enough people in the Republican Party to go against the Democratic Party. So they obviously need the more moderate Republicans. But right now, there's a divide happening between the Republican Party, and that's the worst thing to have when a Democrat has a trifecta, a very narrow trifecta. So, Trump is not going to go away, but what I guess Trump has done is wreck and ruin the Republican Party for their agenda at this point. If you look at the presidential map here, and if you look at the Sun Belt, Joe Biden was able to flip Arizona as well as Georgia, which was pretty insane for a Democrat. That hasn't happened in several decades. And a lot of it was going to happen. Both of them were shifted more towards the left. That said, Donald Trump expedited that shift so much to the point where it happened in 2020 instead of, let's say, 2028, for example. And Joe Biden was able to take back the Rust Belt. So ultimately, what Republicans are doing is they're trying to take the Rust Belt from Democrats, but that's not the right place to focus on, because the Rust Belt is losing in electoral votes. It keeps losing every single decade. Meanwhile, the Sun Belt keeps growing every decade. So if Republicans focus on the Rust Belt with Trump's strategy of focusing on blue-collar white workers, then right here, Democrats have 299. If they are able to get Texas, then literally there's no use for Republicans of getting the Rust Belt. They would have to get every single Rust Belt state, and then some. They would have to get Nebraska second, as well as Georgia, and then maybe even Arizona. So as a result, if they keep going towards the party of Trump rather than the party of moderates, then the Sun Belt is going to go more towards the party of Democrats. And in North Carolina, thousands of people have left the Republican Party in favor of to the Democratic Party because of Trump and the Capitol insurrection that happened on January 6th. Same thing with Arizona, same thing with Georgia. So ultimately, the senators, the Republican senators that are choosing to go with Trump, they're not choosing to go with Trump because they think that's good for the Republican Party. It's not good for the Republican Party in any way. It's because they don't want to have a primary challenger in 2022 or in 2024 when the time comes. or else they might be screwed when it comes to their re-election. It's about them and not about the party or about this country, in terms of their vote. So that's the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. This video is now adjourned, and I'll see you in the next one.